Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the UU Meeting House this Sunday morning. And I'm so glad that you could all make it, including that I woke up after, sadly, I'm sorry I'm late, but I had had a sick pup and overslept. And anyway, we're glad you're here. Welcome and enjoy.
Okay. And I will take this moment to introduce our speaker today, the Reverend Dr. Nancy J. Crumbine, who has been in our pulpit many times, and we're happy to have her here again, all the way down from Norwich. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. What a morning. What a week. I got an email this morning as I was driving over from a Unitarian minister in Devon, England, a dear, dear friend who said, for some reason, I'm feeling an odd warmth toward the people of Nevada. The fog hovers over the deserted pond on this November Sabbath morn. Together from our many solitudes, carrying our sorrows and our hopes, we gather. May this morning, like all mornings, be a beginning of a day like every day, a God, a divinity, held fast in time. May this time together allow us to lay down our fears, Enable us to laugh, to hear each other into truth and into kindness. Give us strength of mind, heart, and soul to love our planet finally with all our intelligence. I want to say, Sharon was going to say something maybe about her. This is a painting or a pastel of her by her mother. You want to say anything else about it?
My mother, Dorothea, didn't have painting.
It's so lovely. My mother was an artist, and I'm surrounded by her work, and it just brings me joy every single day. My poor children are going to be surrounded by my words in some file drawer. Oh, well, okay. So the reading and the story of all ages, I'm collapsing into just readings. And there's a story in them all. It's about November. It is November. And it's a foggy, dark November, wonderful, bare November day. So all these poems fit. Of course, I will be reading Frost, my November guest. But I'm going to start with, and I also am reading in light of this week and the work to come still. I'm going to read Langston Hughes' poem, Let America Be America Again, which I'm sure many of you know. But let me read first a poem that I found in my file drawer that I wrote. And since when I was last here in October, we talked about forgiveness. The theme here is the issue of forgiveness, but also words, which I will be picking up in the sermon, as well, of course, as November. Are we driven by some dire failure of dispensation, those of us drawn to words? Would I write another word if I were forgiven, divinely held, measured by nothing but love? And if it were the case, if this love measured by nothing truly existed, happened even in the tiniest moment of time, would I want it? This forgiveness. Words pulled out of me by light, bleached out of me by grace. Born in all that is unforgiven, words do not dispense, words redeem. They buy us back. Grace, sure enough, but not bleached. Not without failure. Not without bare November days. And the necessity of home. Robert Frost, my November guest, and I want to preface it by saying he struggled, as you all know, with depression, as many do, and which he addresses directly in this poem. Maybe I won't say anything. I'll let it speak for itself. My November guest. My sorrow, when she's here with me, thinks these dark days of autumn rain are beautiful as days can be. She loves the bare, the withered tree. She walked the sodden pasture lane. Her pleasure will not let me stay. She talks and I am fain to list. She's glad the birds are gone away. She's glad her simple worsted gray is silver now with clinging mist. The desolate, deserted trees, the faded earth, the heavy sky, the beauties she so truly sees. She thinks I have no eyes for these and vexes me for reason why. Not yesterday, I learned to know the love of bare November days before the coming of the snow. But it were vain to tell her so, and they are better for her praise. And during the coffee hour or during the discussion, if you want another Frost poem, I have Reluctance is another November poem that he wrote, beautiful. But I do need to read Langston Hughes in light of today, Let America Be America Again. It's quite a long poem, so settle in. Don't have to understand all of it. You'll catch what you catch, which will be sufficient. You all know Langston Hughes, African-American poet, Harlem Renaissance. Let America be America again. Let it be the dream it used to be. Let it be the pioneer on the plain seeking a home where he himself is free. Parentheses, America never was America to me. Let America be the dream the dreamers dreamed. Let it be that great strong land of love where never kings connive nor tyrants scheme, that any man be crushed by one above. It never was America to me. Oh, let my land be a land where liberty is crowned with no false patriotic wreath, but opportunity is real and life is free. Equality is in the air we breathe. There's never been equality for me, nor freedom in this homeland of the free. Say, who are you that mumbles in the dark? And who are you that draws your veil across the stars? I am the poor white, fooled and pushed apart. I am the Negro bearing slavery scars. I am the red man driven from the land. I am the immigrant clutching the hope I seek and finding only the same old stupid plan of dog eat dog, of mighty crush the weak. I am the young man full of strength and hope, tangled and in ancient, endless chain of profit, power, gain, of grab the land, of grab the gold, of grab the ways of satisfying need, of work the men, of take the pay, of owning everything for one's own greed. I am the farmer, bondsman to the soil. I am the worker, sold to the machine. I am the Negro, servant to you all. I am the people, humble, hungry, mean, hungry yet today despite the dream, beaten yet today, oh pioneers, I am the man who never got ahead, the poorest worker bartered through the years. Yet I'm the one who dreamt our basic dream in the old world while still a serf of kings, who dreamt a dream so strong, so brave, so true, that even yet its mighty daring sings in every brick and stone, in every furrow turn that's made America the land it has become. Oh, I'm the man who sailed those early seas in search of what I meant to be my home. For I'm the one who left dark Ireland's shore and Poland's plain and England's grassy lea, and torn from Black Africa's strand, I came to build a homeland of the free. The free? Who said the free? Not me. Surely not me. The millions on relief today, the millions shot down when we strike, the millions who have nothing for our pay, for all the dreams we've dreamed and all the songs we've sung and all the hopes we've held and all the flags we've hung, the millions who have nothing for our pay except the dream that's almost dead today. Oh, let America be America again. The land that never has been yet, and yet must be. The land where every man is free. The land that's mine, the poor man's, Indians, Negroes, me, who made America, whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain, must bring back our mighty dream again. Sure, call me any ugly name you choose. The steel of freedom does not stain. For those who live like leeches on the people's lives, we must take back our land again, America. Oh yes, I say it plain, America never was America to me, and yet I swear this oath, America will be. Out of the rack and ruin of our gangster death, the rape and rot of graft and stealth and lies, we, the people, must redeem the land, the mines, the plants, the rivers, the mountains, and the endless plain, all the stretch of these great green states, and make America again. Please join me in the spirit of meditation, followed by silence. Spirit of stillness, hovering spirit of this blessed earth, you who are the moment before the moment, the breath within the breath. The stars within the stars. Be with us now as we let our hearts rest in your light, letting go what we cannot control, seeking help for what we can. Spirit of unconditional kindness, lead us, surprise us, share with us your wisdom as we offer up our trusting silence to your grace.
Now is a time when we will pass the plate to collect an offering for the ongoing work of this community and a basket of to collect food for the family center. You'll find in your order of service this little piece of paper with the words to our affirmation. I invite you to save this piece of paper. When you're done, you could leave it out on the harvest table and we'll use it next Sunday. What a concept. And I also invite you to say the words with me up here on our screen. What are we here for? Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve the need of all beings, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with the source of our being. Thank you for sharing those words.
Sharon, can we keep this and put it on our refrigerator?
Well, you could, but bring it back.
I'll donate the paper to anyone who wants to keep it on the refrigerator.
Okay.
Thank you. I was really struck by this. I remember Kitsy working with this congregation in developing this mission statement. To the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine, all souls. And I'm just reminded that that the traditional Christian position has been that animals have no souls. That always bugged me. And now, of course, we have scientific proof that they have souls, but that's another talk. So here we go. Oh dear. Okay. As we breathe, keeping the faith, as we breathe the sigh of relief that our democracy may survive to fight another day, as we celebrate this morning the Senate, the spiritual question remains. In the face of all the still unresolved troubles, in the face of so much hate and fear still driving so many people, in the face of grief and fears of our own, and the planet's cries for help, how do we keep faith? How do we foster the gratitude that changes water into wine? How do we change fear into love? How do we change paralysis and exhaustion into continuing joyful social action? In other words, now what? "84 years ago this week, November 9th and 10th, 1938, Nazi thugs, accompanied by cheering civilians, attacked Jewish people in their homes, attacked their businesses and synagogues in a coordinated assault that the Nazi leadership wanted to make appear to be spontaneous. Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. When this horrible pogrom was over, 92 people had been killed, countless maimed and humiliated, 30,000 had been sent to concentration camps, and 1,400 synagogues were destroyed. In the space of 2 days. Recently, Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Jerusalem, received an album of photographs taken by German photographer, Nazi photographer, documenting the atrocities of that night, making it clear that the events were organized, intentional, and to be used for propaganda. The photographs were part of the point. Quote, "We can see from the extreme close-up nature of these photos that the photographers were an integral part of the event depicted. The angles and proximity to the perpetrators seem to indicate a clear goal to document the events that took place." That night felt to most of the German and Austrian Jews as a shot out of the blue, much as Trump's victory felt to us in 2016. German Jewry was so much a part of German society and Austrian society, think Vienna, that until 1938, this author writes, my parents never thought of leaving Germany. Quote, "There's no way the Germans we live with will continue to do these things. It's only an episode." He's referring to things before Kristallnacht. Things like we are experiencing today. The slaughter of Jews at prayer in Pittsburgh 5 years ago this week. Back to the quote, he writes, "That was the atmosphere. These things are only episodes. It will go away." It was also the atmosphere on Kristallnacht. They couldn't comprehend it. It came as a blow. He writes, "I remember my mother standing pale and crying. I remember her phoning her Gentile friends. She had more Gentile friends than Jewish friends. No answer. No one answered her." This morning, we begin with a sigh of relief. Our worst fears of this election's violence, potential violence, were not realized. The lies that we've been hearing were muted. Sanity in many unexpected places seems to have returned. The week has been gentle compared to our expectations. And now Nevada. But of course, a few other things are going on. In Egypt, as we sit here this morning, COP27 is proceeding awkwardly and with disturbing news of fossil fuel lobbyists, repressed and harassed demonstrators, discussions of loss and damage. The climate injustice is beyond comprehension. Like Kristallnacht, we can hardly believe how quickly this has happened. We can hardly believe what has happened to the earth, what has been lost through sheer greed and cruelty, through the dehumanizing of the other, and the speed with which climate has changed, the speed of the rise of anti-Semitism. I've been reading Orwell. I've actually been reading Rebecca Solnit on Orwell this week. And she quotes his descriptions of the children in the coal mines of northern England in the beginning of the industrialized period, the period which the havoc from which we are suffering. These children in the coal mines, how we humans have treated other humans with absolutely no empathy, none, treating them, children, as mere objects, like a tool to be used until it's broken. Their own children, distant from empathy by class. How then these same owners branched out into the empire to treat whole nations as subhuman, as machines to use until they break. And from empire grows fascism. The same mentality that a small class of people are human, deserve respect, and should be kept from suffering, and the rest are not human. They deserve no respect. Moreover, finally, once no longer useful, they need to be exterminated. Jews, homosexuals, Roma, mentally disabled, the deformed and palsied, the other. And then, of course, the earth itself as other, exploitable. Let's just burn it till it's gone. In fact, in order for the ruling people to feel whole, it seems, in order for them to feel like they are someone who matters, the demonizing of the other is central and essential. Western culture appears to need this hierarchy. And when it abates, when the forces of freedom and diversity emerge and thrive, our culture, read Christian culture, seems to unfold itself into a monster of frenzied hate. As Jesus died as martyr for our sins, so deeply embedded in this theology is the necessity of a scapegoat. We seem to need someone to die for our sins. We need the sinner nailed next to us. And the worse I feel about myself, the lower I see myself on the pedestal in the hierarchy of meaningful things, the more I need someone, lots of someones beneath me, to whom I rage and whom I am monstrously accused. From the book of Matthew on, Christianity has needed its other, the Jew, who killed Jesus, who assures the supremacists of his superiority. Of course, great human beings have fought against the strain in Western culture and Christianity. They have seen Jesus as the friend of the downtrodden, not the exploiter. They have understood the prophets to have stood by the poor, railed against tyranny, welcomed the stranger. But so deeply rooted is this dark fear and demonizing of the other, this need of a scapegoat, Ken Burns' documentary, US and the Holocaust. I hope you've all seen it. It's 3 episodes. I'll share my passport number for PBS with you. If you don't have one. You'll know a lot of it, of the details I knew, a lot of it was new. It's very important. He's focusing on the US. He was determined to get it out before the midterm elections. It's relevant. It's so relevant to today. In his documentary, we see clearly the fear of the immigrants, even in a country of immigrants. Central to our horrifying hesitancy to confront the genocide was our fear of immigrants. We knew full well what was going on, and we knew it early. We knew about Kristallnacht. It was in the papers across this country. But once we dehumanize the immigrant, once we demonize the immigrant, as the right wing in this country have particularly been vehement in doing over the last 100 years, especially over the last 10 years, once we point to any human being as the other, it is a slippery slope to Kristallnacht and then to genocide. History abounds with examples, from the witch hunts in Europe, 9 million women killed to clean up the cities of single poor women cluttering the streets. We have Cambodia, we have Bangladesh, we have Yugoslavia, Bosnia, Zimbabwe, Darfur, Native Americans in this country, First Nation peoples in Canada. It goes on, and the earth itself, the species. Hitler made it very clear he was inspired and informed by the racial laws of our country's southern states. Indeed, he patterned the Nuremberg laws, his Nuremberg laws, on southern state laws. He was inspired by our genocide of Native Americans to pursue his land grab in the East. And he made that very clear. And he repeatedly pointed out the hypocrisy of countries like ours, decrying his treatment of the Jews while refusing to let Jews immigrate into their countries. Not only Jews, of course, but Roma, Poles, Ukrainians, Soviet citizens, prisoners of war, Black Germans, Jehovah's Witnesses, disabled, communists, homosexuals, etc. And then, as I say, the genocide of other species. We not only dehumanize other humans, we dehumanize, we de-animalize, we de-soul other species. We don't get that they have souls as well as the earth itself. We are down on our bird count 53%. 3 billion birds gone since 1970. But we don't want to talk about all this. Nancy, stop. Lori wasn't able to be with me this morning, and I warned her, because she's always saying, stop with all the dark stuff. We don't want to talk about it. We don't come to church for more bad news. Friends tell me they can't watch the Burns documentary. I can't watch it, Nancy. I confess I can't watch Trump rallies. I can't do it. And I think all the time this must have been how the Nazi Germans felt. Non-Nazi Germans felt about Hitler. It's unbearable to watch it. A bunch of ignorant thugs who will spin themselves out. This has to be temporary. So today, this morning, we have a reprieve. We can breathe. But I'm reminded that the Germans thought they had a reprieve in March of 1932 when Hitler, quote, lost to Hindenburg. No one wants to hear these parallels. And I'm not a historian, and I can't argue the details of the times compared to them. But I am a theologian and a philosopher, and I say it out loud, maybe for the first time in my whole life. I'm a theologian and a philosopher, and I can see when the opposite of compassion, namely fear, takes on a power unto itself. becomes all-consuming self-interest, greed, and finally the objectification, the making of an object of the other. It's a spiritual disease. We have in this country a profound rise in anti-Semitism, a profound rise of openly hostile rants against LGBTQ communities, the burning of books that literally save adolescents' lives from suicide, the leading cause of suicide still being sexual identity confusion. We have open and unabashed demonizing of immigrants. So let me tell you a story. Rabbi Salkin grew up in a tiny German village of Oberwesel. On Kristallnacht, the Nazi-inspired rabble could not set the synagogue of Oberwesel ablaze because it was too close to the homes of so-called good Germans. So the Nazis ransacked it for whatever they could find, and then they tore up the Torah scrolls, and then they tossed the pieces of parchment into a creek. The next morning, young Alfred Gottschalk and his grandfather waded into the creek. Together, they pulled the saturated pieces of Torah parchment out of the water. This is what Alfred's grandfather said to him. Someday, Alfred, you will put the scroll together again. And for the rest of his life, Alfred Gottschalk put the pieces of Torah back together again and taught others to do the same. And so the question this morning is, how did the grandfather have such faith, such patience? Such faith. There are two definitions of faith that I want to offer you this morning. And this could be like 10 sermons. I'm sorry. I'm just packing things in here, dropping seeds, hopefully. The first is from Thornton Wilder that was sent to me by a friend. I had lots of friends helping me this week. Thornton Wilder. Faith is an ever-widening pool of clarity, fed from springs beyond the margin of consciousness. We all know more than we know we know. I'll read it again. Faith is an ever-widening pool of clarity, fed from springs beyond the margin of consciousness. We all know more than we know we know. And from the same friend, whom I'll name, Linda Mully, I got another email after she got the blurb on what I was going to be talking about this morning. Linda lost her beloved daughter, Laura, 7 years ago. And she wrote me this yesterday after reading my description. Faith is something I'm very interested in and came late to, actually through grief around Laura. I learned through months of being overwhelmed with such intense feelings of loss that if I allowed the grief in, without trying to manipulate it or distract from it in any way, it would eventually leave, although it felt like it never would because there was no timeline. But over time, I guess this amounted to a type of faith, perhaps more a faith in impermanence than anything, but a type of faith nonetheless. So when those feelings do come, and they do, I now have faith that they will leave. This has become a practice. Noticing, Often anger precedes it, she says in parentheses. Noticing, bearing it, noticing the grief, bearing it, and then feeling it recede in my body, then moving forward. Sorrow, fear, grief, if allowed, if embraced, can awaken us, can allow us to go on. Whether it be a grief for a lost loved one, for our country's failures, for our ravaged earth. We can, and I suggest we must, like my friend Linda, let the sorrow in. Like frost, let the sorrow speak. Let her praise the shortening days and the long visibility of barren trees. For it's out of that patient allowing, that revolutionary patience, that patient allowing, that welcoming the stranger at our door, the stranger even of grief and fear. However unwelcoming we feel, that we find the glints there in the welcoming, we find the glints of shards of glass, words tentatively readable on pieces of Torah, ripped and scattered. Pieces of truth and beauty we slowly pick up and patch together. And when the doubt returns, we lie underneath the stars and we painfully, slowly, and patiently find our voices again. Slowly, we find our way to what is ours and ours alone to do. I'll tell you another story of Abraham. Abraham's 75 years old, and God tells him his descendants will populate the earth, but he and Sarah have no children. And they're getting on. So of course he doubts and he despairs. He doesn't believe God. It's over. So what does God tell him to do? He says, go outside. Go outside and look at the stars. Somebody's unmuted. I love it. Look at the stars. Go out and look at the stars. And count your descendants if you can. And the Hebrew is, and he trusted in God. Imuna, I apologize for my pronunciation for my Hebrew scholars on Zoom, but I believe it's pronounced imuna. It means trust or faith, but faith, often in Christian tradition, faith means belief. But this is not the faith I'm talking about this morning. I'm talking about trust. And that's the Hebrew word here in this story of Abraham. He trusted God, and he trusted in God. That trust came not in words, but in his encounter with nature, with one of God's greatest creations, the stars in the heavens. God did not answer Abraham's doubt with words, but with the visual of his masterpiece. I remember as a young girl going on a camping trip. I think I was in grade school, I was very young, and we all were told to lay out on the grass at night before we climbed into our tents and invited to just look up. And in those days, the stars were 1,000 times brighter and more visible than they are today. I'm that old. I'm pre-airlines smog. You all know that 9/11, when the planes were, the astronomers had a field day. They saw things they hadn't seen in years. Anyway, the skies were clear, and I lay there, and it was as if I had never looked up before. Even though my father had always brought me out to look at Cassiopeia's chair over the garage. But I lay there that night, and it was as if it were yesterday. I lay there dumbfounded As the Brits say, I laid there gobsmacked. God asked Abraham to look up at one of her greatest achievements, the majesty of the heavens, the infinite universe threading out into mystery, permeated with mystery, humblingly vast, gobsmacked, utterly astonished, completely humbled. And I was also empowered to be witness, to have the privilege of being witness to that sky, that creation. I felt empowered. We need to pay close attention to our neighborhood and those among us who are in danger. Those of us downtrodden who need to be lifted up. We need to pick up the pieces of Torah that have been torn apart and strewn in the river, muddied and barely readable. And we need to look up and see the vast promise God gave Abraham when he asked him to count the stars. Count, if you can, the creation I have given you and your descendants. We may be the generation that survives a red wave, or we may not be. We may be the grandfather whose Torah is ripped and whose relatives are killed, or we may be the grandson who spends his life putting the pieces back together. We are called to the needs of our generation, and we answer with faith. Not with doxology, not with dogma or some set of beliefs, but in our encounters with nature, in our encounters with despair, in not avoiding the bare November days, but with letting them come onto us. In our prayers in the night sky. Faith is not about creeds, but trust. Trust that the universe bends toward justice, however bleak it may look today. Trust that God, the universe, will provide. This week, we saw in this country, a tattooed man in a hoodie and shorts win the Pennsylvania Senate seat. We don't know how that will work in Washington, D.C., but we do know his commitment to the downtrodden, his commitment to the loving kindness of neighbors, his faith in the dream of democracy prevailed. I want to quote from his victory speech very quickly. He wrote, I'm not going to read the whole thing, just a part of the sentence. For every small town or person that ever felt left behind, he said, for every job that has ever been lost, for every factory that was ever closed, for every person that works hard but never got ahead, I'm proud of what we ran on. He prevailed because he inspired hope in those who could so easily have moved toward the anger that comes from fear. In Fetterman, the working poor voted not for a demagogue who played on anger and lying promises, but for the man who truly cares about them. The disregarded in any society will attack the disregarded. The fear of death motivates us all towards acting out of that vulnerability. But true leadership raises up the discarded, honors them, asks them to lead. As every great prophet in the Hebrew scriptures, including Jesus, stood for this. And so this is the hope of this week. This is the Elijah of this election. Elijah, to whom, when he was starving and in despair, God sent ravens to feed him, and a poor widow. Elijah, who trusted in salvation over destruction, who waited patiently for God to end the drought that nearly killed him, patiently trusted the dark, and in the meantime was proactive in moving Ahab along his dark journey to his ultimate end. This is the hope of this week, that we piece together the torn Torah. We discover that others are doing, that as we piece together the parts of the torn Torah, we discover that others are doing the same in their own way. All those people working in all those states across this country. And this quilt of patched up truth, this weaving of people still dedicated to love instead of fear. This is the hope this week. This is what will prevail. Amen. And we have a final song.
Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us, lead the way on the road from grief to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thoughts, you can give from deep within you. You
And change those earth
with your love. You are like no other being. What you can give, no other can give. To the future of our precious children, to the future of the world where we live. Love will guide us, peace has guide us, hope inside us, will lead the way on the road from grief to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
November of our discontent, these shortest of days. Remind us of the brevity of beauty, complex and multiple. Speak to us of connections and forgotten callings. Spirit of November, suns rising as we begin our week, our month, our years ahead. Accept our prayers, the sad, the fearful, the requests, and the grateful, that we, by sharing with you and in silent communion with each other, and in conversation with each other, that we might rest, that we might trust beyond ego, that we might trust in your wisdom and in your dark and mysteriously sustaining strength. Blessed be.